the largest country of the country with the largest black population first is India.
India.
India means black. The first people of India were black people, right? You can look at the Adamants right now, who are the pygmy type islanders, right, off the coast of India. They're pitch black, right? They come from the first Indians who were the Indus Valley civilization, even before that.
How did the blacks get into India originally? The Africans get into India originally. Right?
Well, we migrated there. Now, also, the word India, if you go to ancient Greek sources, India, Libya, Ethiopia they were used interchangeably, right? So and again, India means black, right? Hindu, if you look it up, in Indian ink is black ink, right? So Krishna, his name was the black one, right? That's what the name means, and he's a primary god in their pantheon. If you look at again, the Indus Valley civilization, they were black people. So we've been there for thousands of years, and now India has about 1.2 billion people. About 200 million of those people are black people. They're called untouchable. They're outside of the caste. They're outcasts, right? So India has the largest black population in the world. Second largest is Nigeria, which is about 185 million, right? Third largest is Brazil with over 100 million. Fourth is the United States with about 50 million.
Explain how the Africans ended up in Brazil.
Okay, well, like I said, from 1494 on, the Portuguese had, their quote unquote slave trade, right? They imported African slaves, right? Enslaved Africans, right? I also don't say slaves. I say enslaved Africans. Why? Because enslaved dictates or describes something done to you, right? If you say a slave, you could be a slave from birth, or you could be, it's a designation of servitude. But if you describe a person as being enslaved, that means something else was done to them to put them in that situation. So anyway, Brazil, they imported Africans and made them into slaves. And they were actually the last country to end slavery in 1888, right? And the thing about Brazil is that just like in Jamaica, just like in Mexico, right? Brazilians had people called quilombos. Quilombos were Africans who fought off the Europeans and actually made independent communities in Brazil. Like the most famous people who did that were called Maroons in Jamaica. Like Jamaica's national hero is Nanny, right? She was a Maroon military leader. She fought off, along with Cujo and others, fought off the British, went to the hinterland and created communities there. Same thing in Mexico. Caspar was another black man, who fought off, the Spaniards and had an independent community of Africans in Mexico.
So there are blacks in Mexico?
Yeah, there are about 5 million blacks in Mexico. Like I said, the global African diaspora, Afro-Latino diaspora is about 200 million.
Where in Mexico are black people?
Well, here's the thing, right? If you look at the first civilization in the Americas, right? They are called the Olmecs. Now, the Olmecs, if you look at them, they have full lips, broad nose. They have military helmets that are like the Nubians around 700, 800 AD, BC rather, and they have braids. So, the Olmecs, their heads were found in La Venta and San Lorenzo and all throughout Mexico. And you have different pockets of Africans there. Again, you have, Caspar, you have a community right in Mexico named after him, that you have blacks there as well. So, we're everywhere. It just depends upon how deep you want to go. And now in Brazil, interesting thing about Brazil, like I said, there's over 100 million Afro-Latinos in Brazil. From 1889 to like 1914, they basically brought in white people to whiten the population because there were too many blacks there. Something similar happened in Australia, where they're trying to, white out the Aboriginals. There's a movie called The Rabbit Proof Fence that actually goes into that, where, they would take Aboriginal children away from the parents, including white families, raise them, have them marry white males and white females, have kids. Those kids are married white, then those kids are married white as well, and all of a sudden they're washed out. So but we're everywhere, depending upon where you look and depending upon how you're looking.
Explain to me in South America why half speaks Portuguese, the Brazil side, and the other half speaks Spanish.
In 1494, what happened was the Treaty of Tordesillas, which was created by the Pope, separated the New World, so to speak, or the Americas, as you call them now, into East and West. The Portuguese had territory to the east, Spaniards had territory to the west. So the Spaniards, right, and their subjects, so to speak, subject of the Spanish crown, the Spaniard crown, spoke or speak the language of the colonizer, of the oppressor, of the Spanish slave owner, right? I don't say master, I say slave owner, because master indicates something that you've excelled in with skill, right? And you may say it takes skill to be, devious, but I'm not going to give you that term. I'll just say slave owner. And with Brazil, the same thing. The Portuguese took over Brazil, and now they speak the language of that colonizer, that enslaver. So that's why you have that. And in the Caribbean, the number one language in the Caribbean is not English, it's Spanish. 60% of the Caribbean speak Spanish. You think about Cuba, Dominican Republic, those are the two largest populated islands in the Caribbean. They're Spanish-speaking islands. The third largest population, island population there is, well, Hispaniola is one island. I'd say country because it's one island with two countries, right? Mm-hmm. Haitians speak French, right? And there are about 10 million Haitians. So about 10 million French-speaking blacks in the Caribbean. And you have, over 20 million, almost about 25 million Spanish-speaking blacks, Spanish-speaking Spanish speakers in the Caribbean, which is again the number one language spoken in the Caribbean, which is Spanish.
And it was split up due to a treaty. What other countries or lands did the Portuguese receive besides Brazil? Because that's the only place I could think of in that hemisphere that speaks Spanish.
Well, yeah, it is. But also remember that Brazil is by far the largest country in South America. Brazil, matter of fact, with the exception of the United States, Canada, and China, right? It's the fourth largest country geographically in the world because Canada has like 6 million square miles or something like that. China has like 3.6 million square miles. U.S. has 3.5 million square miles. Brazil has like 3.2 million square miles. Million square miles, excuse me. So, as far as land mass, it's by far the largest land mass country in South America. The largest populated country in South America because, again, over 200 million Brazilians, about 205 to 210 million to be exact. The next largest country population-wise in South America is Colombia with 45 million. The next largest geographically is